The secret covenant. An illusion it will be, so large, so vast, it will escape their perception. Those who will see it will be thought of as insane. We will create separate fronts to prevent them from seeing the connection between us. We will behave as if we are not connected to keep the illusion alive. Our goals will be accomplished one drop at a time, so as to never bring suspicion upon ourselves. This will also prevent them from seeing the changes as they occur. We will always stand above the relative field of their experience, for we know the secrets of the Absolute. We will work together always, as will remain bound by blood and secrecy. Death will come to he who speaks. We will keep their lifespan short and their minds weak, while pretending to do the opposite. We will use our knowledge of science and technology in subtle ways, so that they will never see what is happening. We will use soft metals, aging accelerators, and sedatives in food and water, also in the air. They will be blanketed by poisons everywhere they turn. The soft metals will cause them to lose their minds. We will promise to find a cure from our many fronts, yet we will feed them more poison. The poisons will be absorbed through their skin and mouth. They will destroy their minds and reproductive systems. From all this, the children will be born dead, and we will conceal this information. The poisons will be hidden in everything that surrounds them, in what they drink, eat, breathe, and wear. We must be ingenious in dispensing the poisons, for they can see far. We will teach them that the poisons are good, with fun images and musical tones. Those they look up to will help. We will enlist them to push our poisons. They will see our products used in film and grow accustomed to them, and will never know their true effects. When they give birth, we will inject poisons into the blood of their children and convince them it's for their help. We will start early on when their minds are young. We will target their children with what children love most, sweet things. When their teeth decay, we will fill them with metals that will kill their mind and steal their future. When their ability to learn has been affected, we will create medicine that will make them sicker and create other diseases, for which we will create yet more medicine. We will render them docile and weak before us with our power. They will grow more depressed, slow, and obese, and when they come to us for help, we will give them more poison. We will focus their attention towards money and material goods, so that they may never connect with their inner self. We will distract them with fornication, external pleasures, and games, so they may never be one with the oneness of it all. Their minds will belong to us, and they will do what we say. If they refuse, we shall find ways to implement mind-altering technology into their lives. We will use fear as our weapon. We will establish the governments and establish opposites within. We will own both sides. We will always hide our objective but carry out our plan. They will perform the labor for us, and we shall prosper from their toil. Our families must never mix with theirs. Our blood must be pure always, for it is the way. We will make them kill each other when it suits us. We will keep them separated from the oneness by dogma and religion. We will control all aspects of their lives and tell them what to think and how. We will guide them kindly and gently, letting them think they are guiding themselves. We will foment animosity among them through our factions. When a light shall shine among them, we shall extinguish it by ridicule or death, whichever suits us best. We will make them rip each other's hearts apart and kill their own children. We will accomplish this by using hate as our ally, anger as our friend. The hate will blind them totally, and never will they see that from their conflict. We emerge as their rulers. They will be busy killing each other. They will bathe in their own blood and kill their neighbors for as long as we see fit. We will benefit greatly from this, for they will not see us, for they cannot see us. We will continue to prosper from their wars and from their deaths. We shall repeat this over and over until our ultimate goal is accomplished. We will continue to make them live in fear and anger through images and sounds. We will use all the tools we have to accomplish this. The tools will be provided by their labor. We will make them hate themselves and their neighbors. We will always hide the divine truth from them, that we are all one. This they must never know. They must never know that a man's color is an illusion. They must always think they are not equal. Drop by drop, drop by drop, we shall advance our goal. We will take over their land, resources, and wealth to exercise total control over them. We will deceive them into accepting laws that will steal the little freedom they will have. We will establish a money system that will imprison them forever, keeping them and their children in debt. When they shall band together, we shall accuse them of crimes and present a different story to the world, for we shall own all the media. We will use our media to control the flow of information and their sentiment in our favor. When they shall rise up against us, we shall crush them like insects, for they are less than that. They will be helpless to do anything, for they will have no weapons. We will recruit some of them to help us carry out our plans. We will promise them eternal life, but eternal life they will never have, for they are no of us. The recruits will be called initiates and will be indoctrinated to believe false rites of passage to higher realms. Members of these groups will think that they are one with us, never knowing the truth. They must never learn this truth, for they will turn against us. For their work they will be rewarded with earthly things and great titles, but never will they become immortal and join us. Never will they receive the light and travel to the stars. They will never reach the higher realms, for the killing of their own kind will prevent passage to that realm of enlightenment. This they will never know. The truth will be hidden in their face so closely they will be unable to focus upon it until it's too late. Oh yes, so grand will the illusion of freedom be that they will never know they are our slaves. When all is in a place, the reality we have created for them will be their prison. They will live in self-delusion. When our goal is accomplished, a new era of domination will begin. Their minds will be bound by their beliefs, the beliefs that we have established from time immemorial. But if they ever find out that they are our equals, we shall perish then. This they must never know. If they ever find out that together they can vanquish us, they will take action. They must never ever find out what we have done, for if they do, we shall have no place to run. For it will be easy to see who we are once the veil has fallen. Our actions shall have revealed who we are, and they will hunt us down, and no person shall give us shelter. This is the secret covenant by which we shall live the rest of our present and future lives, for this reality shall transcend many generations and lifespans. The covenant is sealed by blood, our blood. We are the ones from heaven to earth came. The covenant must never ever be known to exist. It must never ever be written or spoken of, for it is. The consciousness it will spawn will release the fury of the Prime Creator upon us, and we shall be cast into the depths from whence we came and remain there until the end of infinity itself. Author unknown. But many believe it was written by J.D. Rockefeller.
Digital IDs linked to a social credit score, a massive database, and a programmable centralized digital currency could be a reality by 2030. According to the UN's Agenda 2030, providing a legal identity for all and a digital public infrastructure is essential to achieve peace, inclusivity, and justice. And to that end, the United Nations, the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, and partners of the Rockefeller Foundation have recently launched their 50 in 5 campaign to accelerate digital public infrastructure. The aim is to facilitate digital ID, digital payments like central bank digital currencies, and data sharing rollouts in 50 countries in 5 years' time, or by 2028. Now, the Digital Public Infrastructure, or DPI, is an all-inclusive phrase for a technocratic governance system powered by three main components: digital ID, digital payments, and massive data sharing. Now, DPI is being pitched as a mechanism for financial inclusion, convenience, improved healthcare, safety and security, and to progress an environmentally green agenda. But my next guest says it's all part of an Orwellian plan to exercise control and shape a dystopian future by what he calls the controligarchs. Seamus Bruner details all of this in his latest book, Controligarchs: Exposing the Billionaire Class, Their Secret Deals, and the Globalist Plot to Dominate Your Life. Seamus is the Director of Research at the Government Accountability Institute, a prominent think tank based in Florida. He's known for his significant contributions to investigative journalism, and his work has appeared in top publications and has also sparked significant federal investigations. His meticulous research has led to front-page features in the Wall Street Journal, the New York Times, and the Washington Post, and his groundbreaking work has prompted multiple FBI investigations and congressional probes. Seamus, good to have you with us. Welcome to Kitco.
Thank you so much, Michelle. It's good to be with you.
All right, well, I read the book cover to cover, and there is a lot of ground in there, a lot of insight and tremendous background on everything from the Rockefellers to Klaus Schwab to BlackRock to Jeff Bezos, George Soros, Mark Zuckerberg, and to Bill Gates. And there's a lot of focus on Bill Gates specifically in the book and how digital IDs linked to a social credit score and a programmable digital currency, along with fake meat and a gradual takeover of America's farmland, are next on that particular controligarchs agenda. And we want to focus on that and dive deep into that, particularly the digital ID angle here. But before we do, Seamus, give us the overview. Who and what are the controligarchs?
Sure. So the controligarchs are very simply the oligarchs who want to control your life. It's not every billionaire. We don't have a problem with capitalism or making money. We applaud making money in legal and fair ways. But these men have used the powers of government and their relationship with government, much like the oligarchs in other countries around the world, to seize control over key industries, whether it's food, finance, healthcare, energy, and critically information. The information industry, I mean, a lot of people think of like censorship and, they've been shadow banned or deplatformed, and obviously that's not good. But the direction that information and with the digitalization of everything, Klaus Schwab calls it the digitalization of everything. That was one of the pillars of his great reset. We're headed for some pretty scary territories, and we're already there in a lot of ways.
Right. And you mentioned Klaus Schwab, and he's a big part of the book. It discusses the Great Reset, the World Economic Forum, and Klaus Schwab. And much of this vision seems to be coming from him and his "you will owe nothing and be happy" philosophy. So why don't we start off with giving us a little bit of background on Klaus Schwab? Who is he and what does he want, Seamus?
Sure. So Klaus Schwab, he's this academic type, sort of a nerdy guy who's an engineer. He studied in Switzerland, and then he came over to the United States. He went to Harvard and studied under his mentor, Henry Kissinger, who, as most people have heard of Henry Kissinger, is like the globalist's godfather. And so once he learns from Henry Kissinger, he goes back across the pond and sets up this World Economic Forum in Davos. It was previously called the European Management Symposium, which is a little nerdier than the World Economic Forum. But the World Economic Forum, it started with just $6,000 in seed money, and it has ballooned into this $300 million plus per year cash generator for Klaus Schwab and his cronies. Now, the collective market cap of just the top 25 members of the World Economic Forum is well over $10 trillion. I mean, it's an unfathomable sum. BlackRock is a key financial institution backing the World Economic Forum. That would add another $10 trillion in BlackRock's assets under management, with Vanguard and State Street, two of the second and third largest asset managers. You're up over $25 trillion in terms of the financial might of the World Economic Forum. That's higher than the GDP of the United States and also China, and of course every other country in the world. So these are very, very powerful entities. And so what happens in Davos, I mean, these are kind of like the self-appointed hall monitors of the globe. They're the ones who put out a report saying that cows are bad for the environment. And then next thing you know, countries around the world are trying to ban cattle. And they say that cars are bad for the environment. And here in the United States, Governor Newsom in California has announced that gas-powered vehicles will be banned soon. And so out of the World Economic Forum, it kind of is this petri dish of tyrannical policies. Now, they always cloak it in words like sustainable and green and climate friendly. But when the policies are put into place, it leads to less and less control over your own life. And so, yes, I mean, starting with Klaus Schwab, I mean, we can get into him, and what his role in the pandemic is and what the Great Reset was into. But that's kind of the general overview.
All right. And we will get into how the pandemic really provided an opportunity to push forward some of these agendas. But before we get into that, give us still a little bit more background on Klaus Schwab. Where did he spring up from? How much power does he really have? How did he accrue this power?
Sure. So his power comes from his ability to convene this forum. I mean, without the forum, he'd really be nobody. We've tried to get a handle on his net worth. He's located in Switzerland. It's very notoriously secretive over there. But we found his house, and it's not really a house as much as it is a giant estate. It is adjacent to the World Economic Forum in Davos, the gigantic palatial estate with 10-foot-high walls around it. So we know he's doing quite wealthy. I mean, the news reports that his net worth has been in news articles around $1 million for the past 25 years, and that's simply not possible. So his power comes from the corporations who fund this World Economic Forum. And so the ideas aren't so much cooked up by Davos, they're cooked up by its members, corporations like BlackRock, let's say, or the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. Bill Gates is a keynote speaker there. Mark Zuckerberg attends, George Soros delivers keynote lectures. And so I traced the Davos white papers, and a lot of information has been scrubbed from the internet. They really only put out the good PR, not really the stuff that says, and this is how you can control citizens' lives. But going through their white papers, you find that it's actually organizations like the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation who dream up the policies, and then everybody goes to Davos to get on the same page. It's really more of a bringing everybody together, syncing their strategies, getting their strategies in sync, and making sure that they all have the right talking points for how digital ID will help people, participate in society better. I mean, the things like digital ID or digital currencies. I mean, Larry Fink of BlackRock recently said that we need a central bank digital currency because it will make cross-border payments for migrants who've come to the United States or come to Canada. They'll be able to send that money back home easier. So that's why we need a digital ID. And you're kind of thinking, no, that doesn't sound so appealing. But anyway.
Well, no, there are lots of things about a central bank digital currency that are very unappealing, and we've detailed them extensively here on Kitco News, and we'll get into that. You did mention something about how the World Economic Forum has scrubbed the internet of its agenda, but it's actually quite interesting to note that they were quite open with what they intend to do. I mean, there have been YouTube videos rather posted on YouTube that were presented at the World Economic Forum, where they lay out quite clearly what they're looking at doing and how potential crises from a pandemic to a massive cyber attack could be instrumental in setting forward that agenda and how we need to prepare for these crises. So talk us through a little bit of some of the information that the World Economic Forum has practically put out there for everyone, and then subsequently retracted it recently.
Yeah, certainly. So they aren't very private at all about their plans. I mean, they put it out there. They do a good job of cloaking it in. This is for diversity, equity, inclusion, or this is to save the planet. And all of their ambitious, lofty goals. I mean, so yeah, digital ID is a big priority. So when Klaus Schwab announced his Great Reset, it was in July of 2020. He says the pandemic is everybody needs to prepare to have an angrier world. Everybody's going to be angry because the economy is going to suffer because of the lockdowns that we were advocating. Of course, they did very well. I mean, I talked about the trillions of dollars that were transferred from the middle and lower classes to men like Klaus Schwab, Bill Gates, Mark Zuckerberg, Jeff Bezos, etc. But part of this so he said, so I see a need for a great reset. The pandemic has given us this opportunity. His word is opportunity. And I believe Justin Trudeau has used the same word. It's kind of funny. They all saw this tragic event as an opportunity to seize control of society. And so the four things that Klaus Schwab identifies as what the opportunity the pandemic provided is number one, it's going to help us build back better in a greener way. And so you're in the middle of the pandemic, you're thinking, what does a virus have to do with the climate? But we're starting to see what it has to do with that. The other thing is it's going to upend capitalism. And so Klaus Schwab is not a capitalist. He has this new system that he calls stakeholder capitalism. He tries to make it sound like it's a capitalist system, but it's really not. It's much closer to China's model of state-run capitalism, which is this merger of kind of authoritarianism, but some corporations are allowed to get rich. Stakeholder notably doesn't include the people. It's the business leaders, it's the political decision makers, it's the NGO leaders. But on Klaus Schwab's list of stakeholders, we're not there. So in that sense, they're unelected leaders. They're unelected and therefore unaccountable. That's a big problem. ESG is another priority of the Great Reset, is probably number 3, and the digitalization of everything.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of where digital ID fits in, and central bank digital currencies is. And you think to yourself, what the heck does a pandemic have to do with digitalizing everything? And when you go through all of the World Economic Forum literature, you realize that all of these plans were well in the works before the pandemic started. And that's why the pandemic became such an opportunity. Climate change just wasn't doing it. It wasn't cutting it. People weren't willing to give up all of their freedoms to save the planet. It sounded far too ambitious. But for the pandemic, well, locking everyone down, vaccine passports provide a great entryway for a global digital ID regime. And so that's a little bit more about Klaus Schwab.
Right, and you do break again all of this down in the book in tremendous detail over there. I want to read a quick excerpt from the book where you write, COVID presented great opportunities. Schwab identified at least 5 major opportunities that COVID presented. First, the world could redefine the social contract to be more inclusive. Secondly, pandemic could be used to decarbonize the economy. Third, everything that can be digitalized must be digitalized under something that Schwab termed the 4th industrial revolution. And companies could use the pandemic to rethink their profit motive and transition to a new system called the stakeholder capitalism, which we just broke down for us. And of course, the Great Reset also meant more global cooperation or global governance. One of the things that is key to the implementation of this, as you highlight in the book, is the Young Leaders Forum, the World Economic Young Leaders Forum, and they're amongst the most powerful people in the world. Facebook's Mark Zuckerberg, Palantir's Peter Thiel. That was quite surprising to me that Peter Thiel, the co-founder of PayPal, was a young leader. The founder of Wikipedia, Jimmy Wales, the Rockefeller Foundation president, Rajiv Shah, the co-founder of YouTube, Chad Hurley, just to name a few that are part of this World Economic Forum Young Leaders ensemble. Break that down for us a little bit more, how that helps shape the vision.
Certainly. So the World Economic Forum is a powerful organization, and if they tap you to be a member of their Young Global Leaders Club, the YGL club, a lot of people will take them up on it. It will advance your career, but it really shows that the alliance to the globalist vision starts at a young age. I mean, these people, some of these people were not very powerful when they were named to a young global leader, and once they become that, they kind of, the doors open to them. And from corporations who are members of the World Economic Forum, they'll be more likely to hire a young global leader. They'll be more likely to support a candidate running for office if they've been a young global leader. And so prior to maybe the pandemic, this would not have, it's kind of become a toxic brand now in a lot of ways. So if you're running for office and it suddenly comes out that you were a young global leader, people will be immediately suspicious of your allegiance, whether you're allied with the country or whether you're allied with Davos. But prior to the pandemic, I mean, the World Economic Forum was not a very well-known organization, and so a lot of people became these young global leaders, and now they can't really shake the brand.
Yeah.
You know, like Tulsi Gabbard will, for example, in America, will have to answer questions, or there's some senators who were young global leaders who have to answer questions about it, and they probably wish they weren't young global leaders.
Yeah, I think Senator Tom Cotton is one of the senators that you mentioned in the book, and his general ideology does not seem to be aligned with what you would expect from the World Economic Forum. You know, more on that, you write in the book that the World Economic Forum has declared a bold agenda among its ambitions: the abolition of private property and personal privacy, the elimination of fossil fuels, a global transition away from animal protein to an insect-based food system. You'll owe nothing, the World Economic Forum has famously assured, ominously adding, and you'll be happy. So as we've discussed, it's been very open about what it wants to do. Why are these their agendas?
Yeah, it almost sounds like a threat, doesn't it? You will own nothing, but you will be happy. Like, you don't really have a choice here. Yeah, they don't believe in private property ownership. Klaus Schwab doesn't. I mean, they want to bring about a renter-based economy where you don't own your house, you don't own your car. They think it's a brilliant and lovely idea, but most people don't want to be a renter for life, paying someone else's mortgage in a property owned by BlackRock or Blackstone. And effectively what that looks like is it's a paywall around your entire life. I mean, like you get to a website or something, you hit the paywall. That's not so fun. They want a subscription-based lifestyle. And you see it like member corporations of the World Economic Forum, they've really adopted this subscription model type business model where like Mercedes and BMWs, if you want to access various features on the vehicle you're driving, I mean, you've already paid for the vehicle, but if you want to have the remote start function for the vehicle, you have to pay an extra $10 a month. If you want heated seats, you have to pay another $5 a month. So you can quickly see how it gets out of hand.
Right.
And like, I mean, you won't be able to afford nice things. And they're kind of seemingly on board with that.
Well, I mean, you know, arguably you can say that that's a revenue model, right? Continued revenue stream once you sell the car to, you know, maintain, as I say, revenue for the company. But in terms of what the World Economic Forum says is the overriding premise, I mean, they sort of put this under the umbrella of trying to protect the planet, right? I mean, isn't that sort of the overarching theme, that it's all for your own good, it's actually quite benevolent, and we're doing this to preserve and protect the environment and the planet?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, who could be against protecting the planet? I mean, I don't think anybody wants to kill the planet or to hurt the planet in any way. And that's why it's an unassailable mission, unless you have the facts. And the facts are that these are not about saving the planet. I mean, whether it's the electric vehicles or the lab-grown meats. I mean, both electric vehicles and lab-grown meats are much more carbon intensive than their natural equivalents. Just ask farmers. I mean, nobody knows how to be sustainable better than a farmer. They've had the farms in their families in some cases for generations. They know about resource exhaustion. That would kill their business, so they don't want to exhaust resources. Nobody knows sustainability better than farmers, and yet they want to put the family-owned farms out of business and use the more carbon-intensive type farming practices. So, you know, if you just a little bit of scrutiny, and you can see these guys aren't, you know, about saving the planet. It's, you know, the obvious headline that happens every year around Davos is, look at them flying on their private jets.
Right.
They're, you know, they don't have to fly on their private jets. They could use Zoom and Skype like they forced the rest of us to do.
Or fly
during the
commercial,
pandemic.
heaven forbid. Or they could fly commercial.
Totally, exactly right. And they have already, you know, written in exemptions, I believe in the UK or in Europe, where private jet travel will be exempt from like net zero and Agenda 2030 restrictions. So of course it's always going to be rules for thee, not for me, when you're talking about people like Klaus Schwab.
Right. And again, in your book, you detail the war on farmers, how Bill Gates has been buying up much of America's farmland, the agenda there. So I really encourage our viewers to read the book to get the detail. But I bring it back to digital IDs and the DPI system because it seems to be such a central key to implementing much of this agenda in terms of the control that you can exercise once you have a digital ID linked to a digital central bank currency. So help us understand what this universal or digital ID entails. What does it look like? What kind of information would be in it? How would it function within the broader system?
Sure. So Bill Gates has been talking about digital ID for over 10 years. I mean, as cell phones and smartphones were kind of getting launched in the mid and late 2000s, he was saying cell phones are going to be great because you're going to be able to store all of your vaccination records on them. You're going to be able to store your medical records on them. You're going to be able to link all of the information about yourself on one device. So that's kind of when he first starts talking about digital ID, is when smartphones were coming online. And since then, I mean, there's been a huge initiative called the ID 2020. It's funded by major corporations, not just Bill Gates, but Mark Zuckerberg and Google and basically all of the big tech companies, BlackRock. George Soros' Open Society Institutes is behind it. The idea behind a digital ID is that essentially it can be a social credit score. I mean, if you're too polluting, I mean, there's credit card companies right now that track your carbon purchases, and if you spend too much money on fuel or carbon-based type products, your credit score goes down. That's exactly, I mean, you see that sort of desire amongst these globalist elites where they can monitor your spending, monitor like what you're into. I mean, of course, you see the censorship on big tech platforms. If you're speaking, in opposition to any of this kind of stuff, you'll get censored and shadow banned. So why not do that to your finances and using a digital ID? And so the digital ID is one of those things where the pandemic, actually really did advance the agenda there with the vaccine passports. Of course, you saw that in Canada, but we also saw it in the United States. In cities like New York, you couldn't get into a restaurant if you didn't have the Excelsior pass. Hawaii required a safe travels pass, and then in Europe they had the green pass in certain countries, and so that would really did a huge step forward on digital ID. But now vaccine passports aren't necessary. We don't have lockdowns, so they're advancing digital ID for a number of other reasons. Sam Altman, the OpenAI ex-CEO, now CEO again of the company behind ChatGPT, he's closely aligned with Microsoft and working on artificial intelligence. What does that have to do with digital ID? Sam Altman will tell you, because artificial intelligence is poised to put a large number of people out of work, he says that, people losing their jobs, and he says, count on it. It's going to happen. It's not like conspiracy theory. It's much different than the computer revolution. It's this fourth industrial revolution that Klaus Schwab talks about. That's going to lead to job losses. And then when you don't have a job, you're going to need a universal basic income. And so the UBI, so when you hear people talk about UBI, I mean, there will be growing calls for it as people lose their jobs. You can kind of see videos both in the US and Canada. People, they're sitting in their car and kind of like crying. It's tragic about how they can't afford rent. They can't afford insurance. They're working two jobs. Universal basic income will be very appealing to a lot of people. It already is. And how are you going to get your UBI? Through your digital ID. So Sam Altman funded this WorldCoin where they scan your iris and they associate it with your digital ID. And that's why people will probably end up begging for digital ID so that they can get their UBI.
Right, and that's the way to, get the public in. You promise them a universal basic income. They have to download the digital ID. They have to receive it through the central bank digital currency, and then they become super dependent on the system. And, cat is out of the box and it's too late to put it back in. You did mention that in New York, you needed a digital ID. Just to clarify on that, you could get away with physical paper showing that you were vaccinated, but you did have to show your papers every time you got into a restaurant. But I get the broader point that certainly the pandemic was a way to push the idea of a digital ID under the guise, oh, it's so much more easy if you just have this app on your phone. And it certainly took off in Canada. And Canada, you write in your book, did the world a favor when it revealed the relationship between digital ID and digital currency. You write in the book, Canadians rose in protest of the vaccine mandates and digital identification, which was some of the most restrictive in the world. The Canadian Freedom Convoy was an organized effort to protest these new mandates. The Trudeau government saw the danger of letting the truckers and other dissidents rise up, and it cracked down with an iron fist. And when Canadian authorities froze the financial assets of the convoy protesters in Ottawa, they also froze the assets of convoy supporters who may not have even attended the protests. And more shocking, the Trudeau government did this by invoking never-before-used emergency powers. The Canadian Finance Minister, a World Economic Forum acolyte, as you mentioned, Chrystia Freeland, took immediate steps to cut off the truckers and other protesters from the digital financial system. You also go on to illustrate how even supposedly independent companies like GoFundMe put up very little resistance and cut people off the system, just canceling them straight out of the financial system. Now, of course, this is so much easier to do, Seamus, and it's so much easier to crush dissent and to disincentivize any bad behavior when you have a digital ID linked to a central bank digital currency. So expand on the idea of why this link is so dangerous.
Yeah, exactly. And so even with the paper you saw, like when you had to show your passport, you were denied service. I mean, we've now experienced, many of us have experienced scenarios in which you're denied service and denied access. And you've also, you see on social media companies when you're censored and shadow banned, you see these kind of totalitarian impulses. When you have to show an ID in order to do something, except vote, actually, hilariously, in the United States in a lot of places. But when you have to show an ID to access regular goods and services, and when that is essentially stored by the type of people we're talking about here, they can totally cut you out and make you a second-class citizen. And all over the world, I mean, China's got the social credit score in place right now. You can see people are denied services or not allowed to do certain things based on their credit score. The people in this book like that system. They're big fans of that kind of power. And so it's not really conspiracy theory. It's happening in a lot of places. It happened during the pandemic. And if you're opposed to it, maybe you're not going to have much longer to be opposed to it once they start rolling it out and you can't access certain things without the thing. That's why a lot of people got the vaccines, even if they didn't want to get the vaccines. It's because you weren't allowed to either have a job or you weren't allowed to, go to a restaurant even, or go to an event. So,
they make it essential to be able to function in society. You would just effectively cut off from society if you didn't go along with it. And as we say, when we link a digital ID to a central bank digital currency, that just makes it so much easier for the powers that be to regulate behavior. And we say it's obviously not a conspiracy theory. It's very much an agenda that's tremendously ahead, in fact. I mean, as we discussed at the top of the show, that the UN and the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation have been actively pushing this forward. There's one deadline of 2030 for everyone, but that deadline of 2028 for 50 countries to make significant steps in the next 5 years. And just as we are in terms of where we are as a progress report here in Australia, which had some of the strictest lockdowns and some of the most government overreach during COVID, they're quite far ahead with digital IDs. The finance minister there, Katie Gallagher, says digital IDs are very high on the agenda, and a national digital verification service could be in place as soon as mid-2024. So by mid of next year, and she says, especially considering New South Wales and South Australia already have state-based versions of digital IDs. Those first mover countries that we discussed in the 15.5, those include Bangladesh, Estonia, Ethiopia, Moldova, Norway, Senegal, Sierra Leone, Singapore, Sri Lanka, and Togo. And according to a new study from Juniper Research, the number of users of digital ID documents globally will exceed 6.5 billion by 2026 from 4.2 billion in 2022. So this expansion of over 50% has clearly been accelerated by the pandemic, according to the research here. And similar efforts are being made here in the US, right? I mean, the US is not exempt to this at all. In fact, you've got a number of states letting residents prove their identity digitally. Of course, not to vote, as we discussed, the irony there that oftentimes you don't even need to show identity to vote. But as of September of this year, the Federal Transportation Security Administration accepts mobile IDs in California, Iowa, and 4 other states at more than 24 airports across the country. So it's clearly moving along. The Improving Digital Identity Act was passed by the U.S. Senate Homeland Security and Governmental Affairs Committee and moved on to the full Senate for debate. So as we are, Seamus, is it too late? Is there any way to stop this train, or is just this inevitable at this point?
Well, that would be a depressing thought if there was nothing we could do about it. Certainly, I think there's things we can do. You can resist. You can not comply. We saw that worked actually in the pandemic, at least in the United States, and every other country to a degree. I mean, the compliance rates were much higher. I think the U.S. is probably one of the lower compliance rates, and that's probably the reason that there's such a, with funding from George Soros to just upend it. Just create chaos, whether it's at the border or with these, opening up the prisons and hiring these prosecutors who are tough on crime. Probably why there's such an onslaught against the United States is because we don't comply, a lot of us, with certain things like a digital ID. So I won't be getting one. I guess they can't force me to get one, or maybe they'll try. I don't think it's over, not at all. And I think, the one thing you can do is share this information and tell everyone you know about it. I mean, they'll call you a conspiracy theorist, but not if you come with the facts and show. Talk about the events. Like there was this event, Collective Strength, where all of the central bankers got together and talk. This was on the central bank digital currency. They get together and they talk about. It's like a war game where they plan out, sort of like the Event 201 was for COVID, and they run these scenarios of why do we need total control over the global financial system, something that CBDC could provide, is because dissidents are going to cause a run on the banks. And so this is one of the things, like a big threat of CBDC is it's not just financially canceling you or debanking you. It can debank your business and all of your relatives. It can debank you and everybody who who went to certain political protests, like January 6th, for example. They were working very closely with the banks to identify the attendees of January 6th. What if they just froze all of their assets? I mean, you can see any number of ways that they would really like to have this power. And you can just show people examples of them using this power, like freezing the assets of the Canadian trucker convoy organizers. It's already been done. And so, it's not conspiracy theory. You just have to have the facts and share those.
Well, it's not conspiracy theory. Over 110 countries are in active stages of developing a central bank digital currency. And as we've just run through, the agenda to get a digital ID is very, very far ahead. I'm just seeing, the Philippines, for example, issued digital IDs for 76 million citizens. So it's underway. It's underway in terms of digital IDs. Developing a central bank digital currency is underway. And the link of using the two together to control people is still not something that is, widely seen as the likely outcome. How is this being pitched to people? Like, how is this being sold in terms of people wanting to opt in? We discussed the universal basic income as one of the incentives. What are the other ways that authorities are trying to make citizens volunteer to do this or think that it'll be beneficial to them?
Well, it's usually one of three ways or all three ways, and it's safety, security, and convenience. And, combined, those are three good reasons to do some things. This is for your safety and security and your convenience. I mean, it's shocking the number of things that you'll do just for convenience. Turning over your biometric data to clear to fly, to save some time in line. It's not that there's anything wrong with that, but you can totally see why people would want to do it to save some time, to save some money. And of course, I mean, safety is a big one. This will protect you in some way. And then with the universal basic income, I mean, of course, for cash, I mean, you can pay somebody, so that kind of falls under convenience. So, I mean, the security one on the CBDCs is like, we really need to lock down terrorism. We got to make sure that we can freeze the terrorists' money. That one's like falls under safety or security. That was one of the examples they used in this war game exercise. The collapse of the financial system, ironically, the banks who precipitate previous global financial crises are saying that, oh, well, in order, like, we must get what we want or the system will collapse. It's like, well, maybe you should be investigated.
So, again, the book focuses on some of the billionaires and their power and how they use this to push the agenda. And you go through the various billionaires and their links. But as I said, there was a big focus on Bill Gates in particular. What is his connection? And asking you to peer into the mind of Bill Gates, why is Bill Gates pushing for this digital ID? Why is he trying to take over America's farmland? Why is he pushing for fake meat? What do you think? And again, asking you to read into his mind here, is the drive behind his desire to do this?
Well, the simple and most obvious explanation is money. Before he set up the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation in the mid '90s and very early 2000s, he was not a philanthropist at all. He was actually against charity. He never gave money, or according to biographies and even his own father's, memoir. And it was his mother really pressured Bill Gates to become to give some of this money. He was making so much money. He was the richest man in the entire world for like 20 of the past 30 years. And his mother implored him to give away money. He still wouldn't do it. And she died in the mid '90s. And that's right around the time he sets up his foundation. He used the Rockefellers as a prototype. So I get into the Rockefellers. Most people don't really, you think of Rockefeller, you think of Standard Oil. They're kind of these billionaires of the past. You don't really think about them that much anymore, but they're actually very central. And they were this prototype that Bill Gates has modeled his entire existence after, really. And what happened with the Rockefellers is instructive, because the Standard Oil got into trouble with antitrust regulators. It was a trust, it was a monopoly, and it needed to be broken up. That was when the Rockefeller Foundation was founded. They set up this foundation. And they went from being these cutthroat monopolists to being the greatest philanthropists of the 20th century. So Bill Gates, it's uncanny really how similar the story is. Microsoft gets into trouble with antitrust regulators in the mid 1990s, and that's when Bill Gates goes from being this cutthroat software monopolist into being a great philanthropist. Now, over the course of the 20th century, the Rockefellers realized that actually you could make a lot more money through philanthropy, and even more important than money, you could gather control over key industries, and healthcare is a big one. Bill Gates has done the same thing. So for every dollar, we calculated this and put it in the book, for every dollar he gives away, he really gets $2 in return. And it's by funding, white papers that say that climate change is going to, that cows are going to, create more global warming. And that's why we need alternative proteins, and same thing with the energy. So, the simplest explanation is it's about money, but controlling industries leads to a lot of money. And when you see some of the comments that these guys have, it's a God complex. I mean, they, with the food, they think that they can make a better cow in a lab somehow. They think that they can create life extension products with the mRNA technologies. I mean, mRNA, Bill Gates was funding long before the pandemic. And really, if you look at the founder of Moderna and the chief science officer, there's a great TED talk he gives on YouTube about what mRNA can do. It can, anti-aging type applications. So I think that's the thing that maybe unites all of us is our fear of death, or most of us. And so they're afraid of dying. So that's a big part of it, of his scientific endeavors. And then with the transhumanism and the artificial intelligence and the OpenAI, Microsoft was the largest backer of OpenAI. That's also sort of having to do with life extension and merging man with machine. It's really sort of dystopian stuff, and you always thought of it as far off in the future. The singularity. I mean, the singularity. If those who haven't heard of it, is when man and machine merge. It was set to be 2050 according to Google's Ray Kurzweil, but it's been bumped up to 2040, and it's probably going to happen in most of our lifetimes. I mean, what that exactly means, we don't know, but it doesn't look good, except for people like Bill Gates.
Yeah, again, the book highlights a lot of threats in a dystopian future, as you put it, but backs it up with tremendous research, and it doesn't seem that far off at all. Now, we've just discussed how a digital ID is happening. Whether we like it or not, it is happening in the EU, it's happening around the world, it's happening in the US already to some degree. And we've discussed how a digital ID linked to a central bank digital currency is probably the next step. And a central bank digital currency and a digital ID linked to a social credit score is a way to, control behavior. Now, we've discussed on the show how, whilst you may not be able to prevent a digital ID, you can, in a way, opt out of the system or find a way to operate outside the system to a degree using gold and Bitcoin, Bitcoin being decentralized, and that it allows for, to some degree, at least, independence when it comes to money as a unit of exchange and as a store of value. What are your thoughts on that? Do you see gold and or Bitcoin as a hedge against this future, at least in terms of independence when it comes to controlling your wealth and money?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I talk about the war, the coming war. It's already underway in a lot of ways between decentralized cryptocurrencies versus central bank digital currencies. Of course, gold has been the best store of value since forever. And so, yeah, that is a hedge. And this war is like, things like the FTX collapse, and you just had the Binance CEO who's going to pay this, Binance is going to pay this massive fine for, I guess, money laundering. These are huge, threats. I mean, I don't allege a conspiracy at all, but like the FTX collapse was certainly convenient for those who wish to regulate and ban cryptocurrencies. I mean, you just had Bloomberg News's editorial board write, about how FTX, we need to forgive Sam Bankman-Fried, but all of the other decentralized cryptocurrency investors need to be punished. It was pretty illuminating piece. And so they're coming for decentralized cryptocurrencies. They want to regulate them. They don't want you to have an alternative method of payment. And, it's an important discussion.
Right. Well, those who are proponents of Bitcoin will say as long as Bitcoin does maintain its decentralized nature and it does maintain its ability to opt out of the system, it can in fact be a potential, I don't know about solution, but a potential work around here. Other than perhaps gold and Bitcoin, Seamus, what can we do very quickly to try and fight against this?
Well, I do have a lot of hope. You see it more and more every day. People are craving authenticity. They're craving realness. They don't want fake meats. They don't want AI videos. They don't like the deep fake type stuff. So that gives me hope. And then in terms of solutions, you see it. You've seen it going back 60 years when these plans are exposed. The World Economic Forum, the United Nations, the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, they have to reassess. They have to recalibrate and rebrand. I mean, Agenda 2030 is probably going to have to be rebranded. Net zero is probably going to have to be rebranded because people see it for what it is, which is a scheme for control.
Right. So they'll still push out the agendas, but we're creating awareness, and awareness hopefully leads to some resistance before they put out the next rebrand. Again, really recommend the book. Really enjoyed it and so meticulously well researched. Seamus, thank you for your work and thank you for joining us today.
Yeah, it was such a pleasure. Thank you, Michelle.
Thank you. And as always, thank you all for watching. Also, a big thank